Good evening, everyone. Tonight's shiur Lilu Nishmat Avi Morido Ben Reuven Halevi Imorati Rachel Bat Harav Michael. I hope you all had a wonderful Yom HaAtzmaut. And this Shabbos, as last Shabbos, we have the privilege of reading two parashiyot. So this week we're going to actually pick a selection from the second of these two, parshat Kedoshim. Just briefly, Achrei Mot and Kedoshim share a couple of common themes, but Parshat Kedoshim is one of those parshiot that has a little bit of everything in it. Lots of different laws, lots of different topics. And we're going to focus really on one pasuk in that parsha. So let's quickly get these sources up, and away we go. The parsha of Kedoshim, as I said, has a number of halachot pertaining to all sorts of different topics. But one of the most well-known psukim in the parsha of Kedoshim, other than Kedoshim Tihu, is of course the pasuk of V'ahavta l'reacha kamocha. But that's not the whole pasuk. So we're going to focus on, try to at least spend a little bit of time on this pasuk. It's pasuk Yudchet in Perek Yudtet of Kedoshim. Which says the following. It says, Lo tikom v'lo titar et b'nei amecha v'yohavta l'reacha kamocha ani Hashem. And as I said, we're all very familiar with the v'yohavta l'reacha kamocha part, and I want to try to focus a little bit on the rest of the pasuk, but we'll also hopefully get to v'yohavta l'reacha kamocha a little bit too. So just a brief translation, Lo tikom seems to be, if I translate it, says don't take revenge. The Lo titar, don't bear a grudge. Et b'nei amecha, with the children of your nation. V'yahavta l'reacha kamocha, you shall love l'reacha, to your rea, your associate, your neighbor, your friend, whichever way you want to translate rea, kamocha, like yourself. Ani Hashem, I am Hashem. So Rashi, as I said, we'll start out as usual with Rashi, and Rashi is going to first give us a definition of what the two terms lo tikom and lo titar mean. He gives an example, and he does it very simply by not translating, but by giving a very simple, concrete example. Amar lo hasheni maglach. Somebody says to you, I need to borrow some tool that you have in your shed. A magal is either a spade or a hoe or some type of farm implement used in a field. As I said, number of possible different translations. Amar lo, and your friend said, lo, I'm sorry, somebody. You asked somebody to borrow a tool from them, and they said, sorry, we can't do it. L'machar, at some future point, Amar lo, your friend comes back to you and says, Hashileni kardumaf, lend me your kardum, which is generally translated as a hatchet, again, some type of cutting tool. Again, it's a tool that you use. Amar lo, if you answer him, Eini mash'ilcha, I'm sorry, I'm not going to lend it to you, Kedach shalohi shaltani, just like you didn't want to lend me your tool, I'm not going to lend you my tool. Zui nikima. That is considered nikima, which we would translate, I guess, taking revenge. Giving it back to him. He didn't want to lend you. You're going to pay him tit for tat, and not lend him. The ezuhi nitiran. What is considered lo titar, bearing a grudge? Amar lo, same story. Hashileni kardumov. Here it's interesting. He starts it the other way backwards. This way, you ask him to borrow his chopping tool. Amar lo lav, and he said to you, sorry, no. Sometime in the future, he now goes back and asks you if he can borrow your digging tool. Amar lo, hey lacha, and you answer him instead of just saying, sure, be my guest, take it. You answer him and say, here it is, but I'm not like you. I'm not like you. Shaloi shaltani. I'm not like you who didn't want to lend it to me. I'll be gracious and lend it to you. Zuhi netira, that is called bearing a grudge. Shenoter ha'eva b'libo, because you remember this anger, this hatred in your heart. You keep it within you. Okay, even though you didn't take revenge, you reminded it by reminding him and keeping it in you, saying, I really shouldn't, but I'll be nice and do it. But you're doing it, and you're doing it with this little kvetch of, stooping him and saying, hey, see, I'm not like you. That's That's what lo titor is according to Rashi. Then he says very, very simple. Rashi says Rabbi Akiva zeh klal gadol b'Torah. Rabbi Akiva tells us that this is the important principle in the Torah. He doesn't say klal hagadol b'Torah, but he says klal gadol. One of the important principles of Torah is v'ahavta l'reacha kamocha. Now, Simsei Chachamim tries to understand what does that mean, Zek Klal Gadol B'Torah. What's Rashi trying to tell us? That Rabbi Akiva says this is a Klal Gadol B'Torah. Rotza Lomar, what Rashi is trying to tell us, or Akiva perhaps is trying to tell us, the mitzvah zu, the mitzvah of Yahavta L'Recha Kamocha Nichlal Kol HaTorah, includes that this one mitzvah of Yahavta L'Recha Kamocha includes all the mitzvot of the Torah. Kemosh Amar Hillel Azakein. As we know the story about the non-Jew who comes to Shammai and wants to convert, and he says, I want you to convert on the condition that you teach me the entire Torah while I'm standing on one foot, and Shammai throws him out, and Hillel says to him, oh, you want to convert? Here's the answer. Something that is hateful to you, don't do to your friend. Zeu kol Torah kula, this is the entire Torah, v'idach perusho, and the rest is all explanation. So Rabbi Akiva basically is saying, since Hillel chooses this to be the epitome, the essence of Torah, this must be Klal Gadol, the important principle. Now we're going to see later on, if we get that far, that this really only includes half of the Torah. It includes the half of Ben Adam L'Chavero. It doesn't really include Ben Adam L'Makom. But we'll see. I hope we'll have a chance to get to later on. We'll see how some of the other parshanim look at this Klal Gadol B'Torah and V'ahavta L'Reacha Kamocha. All right, Rashbam. Rashbam tells us what is the concept of lo tikom. Is very simple. Again, basing on Rashi's example, he says ligmo lo ra'ah tachat ra'ah, to repay him evil for evil. In other words, if somebody does something negative to you and you repay him by doing something negative to him, that's called nikama, which again in English we generally translate as revenge. Lo titar is afilu bilvavcha, even in your heart. Don't remember the incident and always take it to heart. Ela avor al midotecha, let it go of it. It shouldn't. You don't hold it within you. Don't bear this. And that's what we generally translate lo titar as bearing a grudge. You keep it in you. You constantly remember it, and it's not so much that you remember it, but it shapes your words, your thoughts, and your actions. So what we're saying is really not only should it not shape your actions and don't take revenge, it shouldn't shape your thoughts and your words either in terms of how you treat this other person, even though they may have done something that was not appropriate once. Don't hold back and don't pay them back that way either. Okay, then Rashbam says, "V'ahavta l'reacha kamocha." What he says is imreacha. If it says when it says l'reacha, it doesn't say v'ahavta reacha kamocha. Love neighbor as yourself. L'reacha is saying the lamed is adding something. It's adding almost a conditional. V'ahavta l'reacha kamocha. That it's this v'ahavta kamocha is condition. Imreacha, if he's your colleague, your friend, im tovhu. If he is a person who is acting as a God-fearing Jew or as a Jew who is trying to grow and be observant, then okay, then you have to be hafta. Aval imu rasha, if he is wicked, kidichsiv yirat Hashem sinat ra, because only, in other words, Rashbam is saying that the v'ahavta l'reacha kamocha, the only one who is considered reacha kamocha is somebody who is a fellow Jew who is acting appropriately. But if he is a wicked person, then you have no obligation to love him, because we have a pasuk in Mishnah that says Yiras Hashem sinat ra, or true awe of God is hating wickedness. So obviously, if a person is acting inappropriately, you have to either try to correct him or try to avoid him, rather than trying to bring him close through having an interaction with him. At least that's Rashbam's take on why it says l'reacha kamocha. That it has to be reacha, somebody who is like you. And he's using the kamocha. He's saying that your reacha is like you. Kamocha, he's like you. If he's like you, then v'ahavta. But if not, if he's wicked, then you don't have an obligation to love him. B'chor shor. Orshar says the following: Lo tikal malo titor. Kimosha pirshu rabotenu. Exactly as the Chachamim explained it. Shalo tisna'eno al shalo. Don't hate him for something he did, for something that was his. Titar lo eva, but don't bear within yourself this hatred. Im eino rotel ashir lecha lated lecha. If he doesn't want to lend you or give you something, that's his prerogative. That's his privilege. Or you can't hold it against somebody who doesn't want to lend you something. He's going back to Rashi's example, which is the Gemara's example. He doesn't. Just because somebody doesn't want to lend you or give you something doesn't mean you have a right to be angry or to hate them. The Shema, perhaps Eino Yachol, he's not able to. Or perhaps he's using it himself. So how can I lend it to you when I need it myself today? How can I give it to you? I need to use it myself. That's why I have it. It's what it's my tool for. So we shouldn't automatically assume that he didn't want to lend it to me just because he was being mean or being arbitrary. And I think that's what B'chor Shor is saying, that lo tikom means don't always assume the worst. But he says, im yigzol et shalach, if somebody stole something, or yigno, if he either took it by stealth or by thievery, tinkom v'titar v'kachla shalcha mitachat yodo. You have a right to, quote, exact revenge, but the revenge is basically taking your own thing back. You should not have any qualms about taking something back that somebody stole from you. However, again, if they refuse to lend you something, that you shouldn't hold back against. Okay? If you have to re'acha kamocha. Kimosh atarot sheyehovotcha. Just like you want somebody to love you, and then we translate it, and then he says exactly what Hillel says to this gentleman. In other words, v'hafta re'acha kamocha says, whatever you would not want somebody to do to you, don't do to somebody else. Very, very straightforward and pretty straightforward. Which is not the same, by the way, as the golden rule: do unto others as they would have others do. It's the negative of that. In other words, make sure you refrain from doing that which you don't like, because if you do it the other way around, it's not always positive, because you might like something that somebody else doesn't like. And if you do it to them, that might not be the right thing. But if everything that you don't like to be done to you, you don't do to somebody else, okay, you may miss out on doing something somebody else might like to have done, but you will avoid doing something to somebody else that they don't like having done. She'eno omer. However, the verse does not mean she'ov acher kimo atzmo. It doesn't mean that you have to love them like you love yourself. It's not really the translation of this phrase, v'yahavto yacho kamocha. It means you should love him to the extent that you want to treat him like you want to be treated. That's the way B'chor Shor is translating it. Elokati, because it says v'cheachicha imach. We know from a different pasuk that says your brother should survive together with you, that chayecha kodmim l'chay chavercha. If you have one cup of water left and only one of you can survive, you have no obligation to give it to your friend or to somebody else. You have the obligation to keep yourself alive if you so choose, because your life takes precedence over somebody else when it's something that belongs to you. If it wanted to teach that I have to care about somebody so much so that I care about them equal to myself, it would have written you have to et re'echa kamocha, not lire'echa kamocha. V'chein you have to lo kamocha. Similarly, concerning the ger, it says you should love him lo kamocha, like you want people to love you. The lo katav you have to oto kamocha. Had it written you should love oto kamocha, that would have meant you have to love him the same way you love yourself. So there's a slightly lesser obligation in terms of how you treat somebody else, but that's why both Sivsei Chachamim and B'chor Shor are both telling us that what it means is how you treat a person, that you should treat them the way you would want to be treated, or don't. Conversely, don't treat them the way you would not want somebody to treat you. Okay. But in another place it does say v'haftem et hager v'lo katuv kamocha, but it doesn't say like you. What does that mean? The ahavta lo mashma is to teach us lasot lo kamocha. Kemosh ata rotza sheyasahu lach. In other words, you should treat him the way you want to be treated. Kemosha perashti, as I've explained above, that the whole point of Yahavta L'Reacho Kamocha is making sure that you are treating somebody in an appropriate fashion and not treating him in an inappropriate fashion. Now he asks a very interesting question. B'im Tomar, he said, I don't understand, why is it that the Torah is so makbid on my taking revenge, but it doesn't say anything about this guy who didn't want to lend me something. Why doesn't the Torah say, hey, there should be a negative commandment. If your friend comes and asks you to borrow something, don't be mean and say, I can't lend it to you. I just came as a friendly neighbor and asked him if I could borrow something, and he just said no, flat out refused. But concerning me, the Elisha Yeshli Tanalav, I have a complaint against him. He didn't want to bother me, but I'm the one who gets the negative commandment. He didn't get a negative commandment that says, hey, don't say no when a guy asks you to lend something. He's here, beloved, in lo ashilo kardumi. God warns me with a negative commandment that I shouldn't not lend it to him. There's a negative commandment for me not to lend it to him, even though I have every right, every logical reason to say no, I don't want to lend it to you. The reason that Torah doesn't command him that he has to lend something to you is he's not doing it out of hatred or out of spite, just because he's afraid it's going to get broken. He bought this for his own use, and he's afraid if he lends it out, either it'll get lost, it'll get broken, he won't get it back in time when he needs it, you'll be out of town, whatever. So he just doesn't want to lend you, not because he's angry at you, not because he hates you. If he doesn't want to lend something to you for whatever reason, the Torah doesn't require him to lend something to you. So therefore, there's no negative commandment. He's not doing something wrong by not lending it to you. He's just not, he could have done you a favor, but he chose not to. But in your case, we know, the Torah knows from the example given that you ordinarily were ready to lend him this tool. The only reason you didn't lend it to him was because he didn't want to lend you his tool. Whereas in his case, we don't know why he didn't want to lend it to you. The imkain, and therefore, it's not that you don't want to lend it because you've got another reason. You're specifically not lending it to him because he didn't lend it to you. And as such, that hatred, that evil feeling is the only reason you're not lending it to him, not because of any other reason. So what does Hashem say to you? The love that I want you to have for me, Hashem is saying, should conquer should conquer the ill will you have toward this person who didn't want to lend something to you. Because of the love you have for me, lend it to him. The lotikom, and don't take revenge. And as a result of your being gracious and lending it to him, yavo shalom einechem, perhaps that will ultimately lead to better relations between you, which is what Hashem wants. Hashem wants us to be at peace with each other. He doesn't want us to be angry at each other. So what Hashem is saying, that I want the love that you have for HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the love you have for me, to overcome the anger that you feel toward this person for not wanting to lend you something, and lend it to him anyway. And similarly, we have a similar case where we see a donkey laden by somebody who is not our best friend, who is Torah calls Sonacha, our enemy. But the donkey is overburdened. The load is falling down. Okay? Amar HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Hashem gives us again the mitzvah of helping this guy out. And what is Hashem saying? That the love you should have for HaKadosh Baruch Hu should overcome the hatred you have for this other person, and you should help him because I, Hashem, want you to help him. And this is what it means when we say the ways of the Torah are ways of pleasantness, and all of its paths, all of its different directions, all lead to shalom, to peace. Now the pasuk ends with the words Ani Hashem, and according to what we just said, why is it Ani Hashem? The love you should have for Hashem should be enough to cause you to forget the anger, the hatred you want to have toward this other person for what they did. The lo titar, and again, the pasuk also says velo titar as opposed to velo lo tikam. Lo titar means don't hold a grudge. Af lo titar ve'b'shvilcha. Again, you shouldn't even hold this grudge within you. You should let it go and not feel that you have to do something to get back at this person who didn't want to lend you something. Okay. Lo titar is lo tishbar. Okay. Okay. Chizkuni. Okay. Lo tikom. We should not take revenge. Lefi shachema mechabishotecha. In other words, the reason we shouldn't take revenge, why would I even think of taking revenge? Because the anger that I have directed toward this person who didn't want to do me a favor is conquering you, is taking over you. And that's why the Torah tells us, Lo tikom, you have to overcome that anger. However, concerning Kadosh Baruch Hu, we know that Hashem does take revenge, or does take, and He is the one who's Baal Chemo, controls his anger. So since we know HaKadosh Baruch Hu knows how to control his anger, when He takes revenge on somebody, it's not revenge in the same sense that we think. It's revenge for a person is paying for the consequences of his actions. But that's what the Navi says, no Kem Hashem Baal Chemo. So he wants to connect that. Lo titar. Now the mitzvah of lo titar, of bearing a grudge, is b'mamon diber hakatuv. The pasuk is talking about something that happened concerning my possessions. Avol b'shel guf. But if somebody harmed me physically by hitting me or striking me or causing something to happen to me physically, eino zakuk limcholo ad she'ifaytenu. I do not have to forgive them until they come and ask for forgiveness. I don't have to go out of my way to forgive somebody who hurt me. But when it comes to not willing to lend me something, that's something I have to be willing to let go. Lo tikom, interestingly enough, Chizkuni says lo tikom, to take revenge is always b'maaseh. It's through some action that I do, whereas velo titar, bearing a grudge, is b'machshava, is something that I do in my ideas, in my thoughts, in the way I feel toward this person. And it's not easy for us to overcome either of these. That's why the Torah specifically knows and understands that these are two very natural human thoughts that we want to get back at people. We don't want, and the Torah doesn't want us to do that, because all that happens is it becomes a cycle of, I don't like to use this word, but cycle of violence, a cycle of anger and distancing, and we just become enemies for no reason over something very, very small. Okay, then he goes through, he quotes Rashi, who says the whole thing of what it is, and basically he goes through the same question that we just had in Klei Yakar. Why is it that this specifically requires it? And here is it gives a slightly different twist on the answer that we just saw above in the Bechor Shrav. Yesh Lomer. Again, this question was, why does the Torah have to warn this person who is, quote, retaliating, and he doesn't warn the perpetrator in the first place? Yesh Lomer. Sharishon, the original perpetrator, perhaps The first guy is just he's just a stingy guy, and he has no desire to lend anything out. So the Torah understands that there are people who are stingy. That's the way it is. The first guy was stingy. A person wants to be stingy and not lend his other stuff. That's his prerogative. The Torah is not happy about it, but the Torah doesn't forbid you from being stingy. It's not happy when you're stingy. It's not a very good midah, but the Torah isn't going to forbid a person from saying, hey, I don't want to lend you something. And we saw this already with the Bechor Shor above. In other words, the whole reason he doesn't want to lend him is not because he wouldn't have lent it to him. If he'd have come first and asked to borrow it, he would have lent it to him. But now that he didn't want to lend me, I'm not going to lend him. Lefikach. And again, he quotes the same thing that we just saw in the Bechor Shor. HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, the ava that you have for me, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu should overcome the sinah. Okay, then he continues, however. The Halamed Bo Yitera, it's the fact that it says V'yahavta l'reacha kamocha im tasekein ta'aveu. He's saying that the V'yahavta l'reacha kamocha is directly connected to this lo tikom and lo titor. That by not bearing a grudge and by not taking revenge, you will come ultimately if you can get rid of that anger and that hatred, you'll ultimately come to love this person, to realize this person is a fellow Jew. And okay, so he's a little stingy. He didn't want to lend me something. It's not the end of the world. But lamed bo yitera, okay, the lamed is an extra word. It's not you have to reacha, it's lireacha kamocha. Davar acher. Okay, it doesn't say you have to reacha kamocha. It says lireacha. Di'ef shall lasot kain. We should only do this. It's only possible to do this to your friend. Perush v'yahavta lasot lo tova. We have to enjoy. We have to want to. We have to love to do favors for other people. Just like we like other people to do us favors, we want to do favors for other people. And again, he quotes this quote from Hillel: don't do something that you don't want somebody to do to you to somebody else. And similarly, the way we translate it, that we have to love the stranger. Similarly, that it doesn't mean you have to love him as much as you love yourself. What it means is we have to love him in the way we treat him, as we saw above with the Chorshor, very similarly. Hadar Zakain. It says, we have this pasuk. My l're'echa. What does it mean, l're'echa? It should have said, have or it should have said, re'echa. You have to re'echa kamocha. Love your friend like yourself, not to your friend. Yesh loma. And his explanation is as follows. The im hayakativ re'echa. If it had said re'echa, love your friend as yourself, Hayiti Omer, I might have thought, I should give all my possessions to my friend, just like I want to be able to use all of my things, I should give them all to my friend to use also. To your friend. It doesn't mean that I have to give away everything for my friend. Kilomar, ahav ma shel re'acha, means you should love what belongs to your friend. Kilomar, as if to say, shalotigzal lo memono, that you shouldn't steal possessions from others. And if you're in a position where you can save your friend from incurring a loss, do it. Don't hesitate to do it. But however, you can hate somebody who is trying to steal something from you. So the point here is that v'ahavta l'reacha kamocha means, according to Hadar Zakanim, he's just saying it means you should care for your friend's possessions the same way you care for your possessions. Don't try to steal them. If you can save them from being lost, save them. Don't damage them, etc. So you should take care of your friend's possessions the same way you care about your possessions, which is a little different twist on the v'ahavta l'reacha kamocha. Yor HaChaim HaKadosh. Lo tikov. Hazal in Torah Kohanim says the following: Nikima hi she'osa lo kima aseyu hara. Revenge is I do back to him like he did something evil, bad to me. I do it back to him. Nitira shalo yomar lo lo esel. The concept of nitira is a verbalization of saying, oh, I could be mean to you, but I'm not going to be mean to you like you were mean to me. Ukfiza, and according to this interpretation of nikama and nitira, natan tam hakosav l'mitzvah zu b'smichut v'yohavta l'reacho kamocha. That the purpose of the phrase v'yohavta l'reacho kamocha is to give a rationale for the mitzvah of lo tikom and lo titor. Perush is if to explain. Ki Hashem chafetz shetiyeh ohev reacho kamocha. Hashem wants you and your neighbors and friends to have good relations, to like each other. V'mata omer lo kain, if you say to him, well, I'm not going to be mean to you like you were mean to me, haregilita datcha, you've already opened the door and shared with him, ki tamon hayaba libcha ma'aseh bilti agun lach. You still remember and you still think about that thing he did that wasn't appropriate. But not on Talmud Davar. But again, it goes further and says, Ani Hashem, I am Hashem. Perush al derech omram shebe'emtzaut yichud halevavot mit yached shemo yitbarach. That through Am Yisrael, people being yichud levavot, in other words, by people getting along with one another in harmony, in peace, and caring about each other, that creates a greater awareness of Hashem's name. Liot Knesset Yisrael Anfei Hashem Shem Havaya. The Knesset Yisrael, the Am Yisrael, by forming a group, by being united, we are increasing the awareness in the world of Hashem's name. Dichsiv ki chelek Hashem amo, because chelek of Hashem is amo. We Am Yisrael are part of Hashem kiviyachol. Chakam Hashem, and Hashem was wise. Letzavot b'inyan hanagat Yisrael ze'im zeh. And that's why Hashem, in His wisdom, commands us how we should treat each other according to these different levels. Mitzvah dachat. First mitzvah is lo tisna achicha bilvavecha. The first step toward harmonious relations with all of Klal Yisrael is don't hate anybody in your heart. The second is lo tikom, don't take revenge. And the third is and lo titor, don't hold a grudge. And Gimel, then only through those two can you reach this third level of the Ahavta l'reacha kamocha, that you will be able to reach a level of Ahavta l'reacha kamocha.
Go ahead.
The diktek lomar, and if we're very careful, we will see that the Torah is very specific in how it says each of these things. The first one, lo tisna, starts with achicha. He's only your brother. Second one, it says, et b'nei amecha, or those who are members of your people. Lomar, she'ein mitzvah elo al anashim she'osei masei amcha. That these mitzvot of being close are only with people who act like members of Am Yisrael. Avol sonei Hashem, but those who Hashem hates, or those who hate Hashem, kigon hamumarim, those who are apostates, Kedoshim, and those who have left the fold. Asur lehovotam. It's forbidden to love them. The adarab, tzorach lisnotam. We should hate them. Kolomar, as the pasuk says, halom misanecha Hashem. Those who are Hashem you hate, esna I will hate. So we see that's why again it's v'yohavta l'reacha, and we said the Chazal tell us reacha means somebody who is joining you in trying to come closer to Hashem and trying to be a person who lives by the rules of the Torah. Again, we have to understand that this concept of loving really should apply to everybody among the Am Yisrael. I think when we talk about mumarim and apikorsim, we have to be very careful who we put in that category. Again, I don't want to judge anybody as being in that category, because if we look, we understand that everybody has some redeeming factors, and we need to focus on those positive factors that make them can bring them into being part of Klal Yisrael. Okay. Panim yafot. Lo tikom v'lo titor et b'nei amecha. Yesh lefarish. Ma shekatuv et b'nei amecha. Why does it say lo tikom v'lo titor et b'nei amecha? Why et b'nei amecha, the people of your nation? Mipnei she'amru Chazal, because we say the following. Gemara says the following: Baba Batra, Gabe v'nasi bi'amcha lo ta'or. What does it mean? Amcha be'ose maase amcha. When they act as a member of the Jewish people. The kivin she'amru Chazal. What does that mean to act like a member of Am Yisrael? But b'midat Yisrael, to follow in those midot that Am Yisrael are known for, shehem, which are gomle chasadim. Primarily, we help others. We do gomle chasadim. V'zeh she'amar lo hashileni maglacha. Somebody who says, "Lend me something," and they didn't want to. V'amar leilav im kain. If that's the case. We would suspect him, hey, he doesn't want to do me a favor. He must not be, maybe he's not a member of Am Yisrael. So he's not acting like a member of Am Yisrael. Im Kain, therefore I might think, so I might think I have every right, since this guy is not acting like a member of Klal Yisrael by being nice and doing a good deed, I have a right to take revenge on him and return his action on to himself. Aval Amru Chazal, Sharoi Lashiv Hagemul Lidore Dorot. I can't look only at this person. I have to look at this person and all of his antecedents and postecedents throughout all generations. Afilu Elu she'enam gomle chasadim, even those who don't do acts of kindness, hein b'nei gomle chasadim. They are children of those who did do acts of kindness. But that's why it says v'zesh amar lo titor et b'nei amecha. It doesn't just say lo titor et amcha. It's b'nei amecha. Those who are members, who are children and descendants of your family. Shem banim shalose maaseh amcha. That even if they themselves might have temporarily exhibited an inappropriate behavior, nonetheless, they're from a family of appropriate behaviors somewhere up the line or down the line. Very interesting approach of looking at this. Okay, we get to Klei Yakar. Okay, lo tikom lo titor b'nei amecha. Lo amar amitecha. It says b'nei amecha, and it doesn't say amitecha. Lefi shanekima v'netira techuna ra'a beguf ha'adam. Because taking revenge and holding grudges is a very, very negative aspect of a person. The ein min haroi levakesh nekama al shumadam shumibnei amecha im tov imra, and it's not appropriate to seek revenge on anybody who is a member of your nation, even if he's not necessarily the most wonderful person. Lefisha mistama hanekima, because normally the nikama is almasha asalacha begufcha or bemoncha, something physical. Normally when we talk about taking revenge, we're talking about he did something physical and you're going to return it with something physical. And what Klei Yakar is saying very interestingly, hadavar aim einam sefunim v'chashuvim kol kach sheyu ruim linkom aleihem. Saying it's trivial, it's not anything that's in the physical world is trivial. It's not worth taking revenge on. Amnam, however, he said, mutar lasot nekama bagoyim. It is permitted to take revenge against the goyim. Why? Ki heima mistama rotzim la'avir mi'al mitzvot Hashem u'ladichacha mi'al Hashem elokecha. Because the presumption is somebody who is a guy is their purpose in life is to try to convince you to leave Judaism. It's a very interesting way to look at the world. But I guess in the 16th century, anytime you ran into a guy, he was probably, especially I guess Klei Yakar is Mid-Central Europe, they were probably some denomination of Christian. They were probably trying to missionize and trying to convince you to convert. And I can understand why he says that. V'zeh davar chashuv v'safon. This is something very, very important. And for that, for them trying to steer you away from God, you got to go and fight back. Kihu nikret nikmat Hashem, because it's not I'm taking revenge, I'm taking Hashem's revenge. Lekach nemar, and that's why the pasuk says kan et bnei amecha lo tikom v'lo titar et bnei amecha l'ma'ed hagoyim she'ena b'nei amecha take it, to remove from this mitzvah taking revenge against goyim who are not from the Jewish people. Shenemar lasot nekama bagoyim. That we should take revenge against the goyim kinikmat Hashemi, because taking revenge against the goy is Hashem's revenge, because Hashem does not want us to be too close to goyim that we start thinking that their religion is okay, that anything they're doing to follow their religion is okay, because it's not that far from Judaism, or whatever the reason might be. If they are trying to convince us to leave Judaism, we have to be very, very strong and stand up to them. The Alzeh Amru Chazal, Gedola Nekama, and that's why there's a Mamar Chazal in the Gemara that says Nekama is a great thing. We would say, wait a minute, the Torah says, no, Lo Tikam. How can we say Nekama is a great thing? Why is it great? Because it is a word that appears in a pasuk between two names of Hashem. Shenemar, as it says in Parak Tzaditet, Parak 94 of Tillim, Kel Nekamot Hashem. Kel, which is the name of Hashem. Nekamot is the word Nekama, revenge of Hashem. Hashem is a God of revenge. Horubi Etzba, this is to show us, literally showing us, Shetchilat HaNekama V'Sofa, that whenever we think of taking revenge for any reason, lo tiyeh ki'im l'shem Hashem. It should only be revenge that's for the name of Hashem. Dehainu bizman shivakesh eze adam hadichachal me'al mitzvot Hashem. Only time we should be even thinking of taking revenge is when we think that revenge is motivated by somebody trying to get us to leave Judaism, to stop doing mitzvot. Ki gadol ha'machtiat ha'adam, the one who makes another person sin, Yota Min Hargo, is worse. What he is doing to you is worse than somebody who kills you. Perish Rashi al pasuk as Rashi explains in Kitavo, we have a series of pasukim where we're told that we are not to hate an Egyptian, even though they physically harmed us, because they weren't trying to remove us, whereas Ammon and Moab, who were trying to remove us, take us away from Judaism, we have to hate. We're not allowed to even come close to. The Chazal Amru, and similarly, we have the same thing. Talmid Chacham she'eno nokem v'noter k'nafash eno Talmid Chacham. A Talmid Chacham who doesn't take revenge on somebody who again tries to demean him or to remove his, belittle his learning or the Torah, or any aspect thereof, you have to take revenge against. And all of this is to give honor to Hashem, who is in our midst. Okay, Kliyakar continues. Anything involving the physical world, to get back to our pasuk, now that we've talked about taking revenge when it's something related to the spiritual world, but when he's talking about the physical world, Hashem does not want us to take revenge on little insults that happen in the physical world. And he gives a very, very interesting parable here. You have a child who's playing, and he's playing kids' games. And he built some structure or something, or some other toy that he's playing with. And a person comes along, he comes, the child just built this beautiful structure, and a guy comes and knocks it down. And the child is screaming, he's crying bloody murder to his father, to his parent, that this guy did something to him. About this person who really I just spent all that time building this, and he just knocked it down. The ilu haya aviv mashgiach bo, if his father would pay attention to him, the oseritzo no, and did what the child asked, haya horgaz adam, he'd kill him. I want to kill him because he broke my toy. I want to kill him. If you listen to your child and did that, you would kill the guy. Amnam aviv eino mashgiach b'kolo. However, his father was a little bit wiser, a little bit older, doesn't listen to what he's telling him. Even if the child, according to his limited wisdom, limited perception, thinks that this guy, he really did this terrible thing to me, nonetheless, Not the end of the world, what just happened. It's no big deal. But for the child, it is a big deal. V'sechel maseh habein hayu havolim. V'shekol maseh habein hayu havolim. That again, yeah, for the kid it was important, but it's all nonsense. It's not important long term. The Eidon Kedai Shebavuram Yiyela Zek Oyevu Mitnakem. And it's not worthy that because of this little thing, that this person and this child should be enemies forever. Because really what he did was no big deal. Yes, to the kid it's a big deal, but it isn't really. This is the same way when we think about Hashem, our relationship with Hashem and Hashem's relation to his creations. Because of their limited viewpoint, their limited perspective, they think because the physical world, things that relate to the physical world, we tend to put them out of proportion, and we think, oh, they're really somebody who does something that dishonors me or harms me, or they cause me a financial loss. It appears that they've done me terrible wrong. But and we cry out to Hashem that he should take revenge for us. But sometimes sometimes Hashem doesn't pay attention to their cries. Why? As long as there's nothing in this action that is going to cause him harm, he's not going to do. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is not going to get involved. Because in Hashem's eyes, everything that we are involved with in the physical world, in Hashem's eyes, it's like the way we look at that child playing with the toys. Al Kain, therefore, Eina Kadosh Baruch Hu Mashkiach Bahem Bezulat Zman Shal Yidei Me'orot Shebegufot Yagia Lo Bitul Torah Mitzvah. However, if these things are going to cause this person to be unable to perform Torah and Mitzvot, Az Hanikama Nikmat Hashem, then the fact that what this person has done has caused some diminishment of the other person's observance of Torah and Mitzvot, then it's Hashem's Nekama, and then Hashem will answer it and answer our tefillot. So I thought a very interesting perspective for us to take here as we're going through Yom HaZikaron, Yom HaAtzmaut, that we think about how we relate to others, and again, that we make this very, very clear distinction, at least according to Yakar, a very clear distinction between physical things that are transient and passing, and those things that impact on our spirituality and our ability to try to be the person we want to be, so that we can come closer to HaKadosh Baruch Hu and his mitzvot. We could keep going, but my time is up. So I want to thank you all. And at this point, just tell us that, again, this whole concept of Yahavta L'Reacha Kamocha is so critical for Am Yisrael at this junction and at every junction. Our ability to go forward, to realize and to go grow together and realize that Am Yisrael is one as far as the rest of the world is considered. It doesn't matter whether you're wearing a kippah sruga, a black hat, no kippah. Doesn't matter where you are. If you are Jewish, you are part of that same tribe. You're in that same boat. And we have to understand that it doesn't matter, that we are all in this together. And when we all work together to be together for Achdut Yisrael, then we can be Zocheh to Gula Shleimim Herav Yameinu. At this point, I open up questions, comments, and or feedback. Anybody? Any questions? Okay, none. All right. Thank you all for joining. Have a good rest of the week. Ezrat Hashem, we will see you next week, same time. That's my plan at this point. Laila Tov to everyone, and we'll see you. Be well.